Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh, coming up in the next hour. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi en route to historic Ukraine visit after concluding a productive visit to Poland, setting new milestones in bilateral ties. US Vice President Kamala Harris formally accepts Democratic presidential nomination, attacks Donald Trump, calling him unserious and a threat, vows new way forward for all Americans.
I accept your nomination to be President of the United States of America.
America's space agency NASA to decide stranded Starliner astronauts Sunita Williams and Barry Wilmer's return path on Saturday. India celebrates its first National Space Day, honoring the success of Chandrayaan-3 mission. After concluding his productive two-day visit to Poland, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi embarked on a historic visit to Ukraine. Prime Minister Modi is visiting Ukraine at the invitation of President Volodymyr Zelensky. It will be the first ever visit by an Indian Prime Minister to Ukraine after the establishment of diplomatic ties between the two countries in 1992. Prime Minister is travelling to Kiev from Poland in a Rail Force One train. The return trip will also be of the same duration. India and Poland have decided to elevate their bilateral ties to a strategic partnership following a meeting between prime ministers of the two nations in Warsaw on Thursday. The two leaders have also agreed to have a 5-year action plan to take the relationship between the two countries to higher levels while sending out a key message of peace. Both prime ministers highlighted the negative impact of the war in Ukraine and said the use of threat or use of nuclear weapons is unacceptable.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi remains committed to strengthening India's global presence. Whether it's deepening diplomatic relations or spearheading peace efforts, he consistently emphasizes dialogue and diplomacy as the path forward. His tribute at a memorial for fallen soldiers in Poland underscores his dedication to promoting peace in the region.
यूक्रेन और पश्चिम एशिया में चल रहे संघर्ष हम सभी के लिए गहरी चिंता का विषय है। भारत का यह दृढ़ विश्वास है कि किसी भी समस्या का समाधान रणभूमि में नहीं हो सकता। हम शांति और स्थिरता की जल्द से जल्द बहाली के लिए डायलॉग और डिप्लोमेसी का समर्थन करते हैं।
His Polish counterpart lauded Prime Minister Narendra Modi's effort to bringing about a peaceful and just end to conflict in Ukraine.
Not only on defense but on various issues, our understanding has enhanced. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is committed to further deepen India-Poland relationship. PM Modi is also willing to cooperate with the European Union. I am confident that PM Narendra Modi will play a very crucial role.
Apart from taking up the Ukraine conflict in their bilateral meeting, both leaders agreed to elevate their relations to a strategic partnership. Discussions covered diverse areas of bilateral ties, including trade and investment, science and technology, defense and security, cultural and people-to-people connections.
फूड प्रोसेसिंग के लिए क्षेत्र में पोलैंड वर्ल्ड लीडर्स में से है। हम चाहते हैं कि पोलैंड की कंपनियां भारत में बनवाए जा रहे मेगा फूड पार्क से जुड़े। भारत में तेज गति से हो रहे शहरीकरण से वाटर ट्रीटमेंट, सॉलिड वेस्ट मैनेजमेंट, अर्बन इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर, ऐसे क्षेत्रों में हमारे सहयोग के नए अवसर खुल रहे हैं।
Polish Prime Minister Tusk also expressed Poland's eagerness to support India's defence modernization and reiterated the importance of bolstering India-EU relations during Poland's EU presidency.
Poland is ready to take part in India's defence modernization. We have the necessary technological capability and experts. India is global leader in the field of artificial intelligence, and we are using this technology in several areas including defence.
Prime Minister Modi also called on Polish President Andrzej Duda in Warsaw. Over the past decade, India-Poland relations have seen remarkable growth, with bilateral trade rising to $5.72 billion in 2023, largely driven by Indian exports. As the two nations celebrate 70 years of diplomatic ties, this partnership has been further strengthened by initiatives like the Social Security Agreement aimed at enhancing workforce welfare and promoting mobility. Bureau Report, DD India.
And for more, joining us is our correspondent Vishal Beristo from Poland. Vishal, what are the key takeaways for India from the two-day trip of Prime Minister to Poland?
Well, it was a very eventful day yesterday with the hoardings of Vitamay Modi, which means welcome Modi in Polish. And Prime Minister had three different events starting from the Jamnagar Memorial, then he went to Kolhapur Memorial, and in the evening he addressed the Indian diaspora, telling them that their presence and their style of welcoming is very nice, and he's quite overwhelmed with the way he was received here in Poland. And he also said that because of their good works, India is feeling very, very proud of the Indian diaspora. And Prime Minister also spoke about what progress India has made in spite of all the challenges of COVID-19. He also did mention that despite of the ongoing tension between the two nations, Russia and Ukraine, India is always for a diplomatic solution. India wants peace and stability in the region, and that is why he is here. And he would also be going to Ukraine to carry carry the same message to Ukraine.
Okay, now the focus shifts from Poland to Ukraine. What is high on the agenda?
Well, the official meeting, the bilaterals of the Prime Minister would be held today. He would be meeting the President and Prime Minister of Poland. He would be discussing all the important issues. Remember, this is for the first time in 45 years that any Indian Prime Minister has visited Poland, and this was also mentioned in Prime Minister's address before the Indian diaspora. And he also said that recently I was in Austria. It was in 40 years that any Indian Prime Minister has been there. So what has not happened till now is now happening, because now we have changed the policy. India wants to show the world the way of peace and prosperity. India wants to lead the global south, and not in a way of a big brother, but in the style of friendly neighborhood. And whosoever is in need, India is always there to help them.
Moving on, Ukraine has said that it used a US-made GBU-39 bomb to strike a Russian platoon command post in Kursk region of Russia. Ukraine's Air Force released footage on Thursday. Kiev's allies, including the United States, are supplying weapons to Ukrainian forces, but have imposed restrictions on how and when they can be used inside Russia. Out of concern, such strikes could prompt retaliation from Russia that draws NATO countries into the Ukraine-Russia war. The International Atomic Energy Agency Director General Rafael Grossi will visit Kursk nuclear power plant next week to assess the situation. IAEA was informed by the Russian Federation that remains of a drone had been found within the Kursk nuclear power plant. Russian President Vladimir Putin on Thursday accused Ukraine of trying to strike the Kursk nuclear power plant in an overnight attack. Acting Kursk Governor Alexei Smirnov told Putin the situation at the plant was stable. DD India's Dasha Chernysova reports from Moscow.
Russian President Vladimir Putin said Ukrainian forces tried to attack the Kursk nuclear power plant on Thursday. He said that Moscow had informed the International Atomic Energy Agency IAEA about the incident. He said that he expected watchdog specialists to come and assess the situation. Acting Kursk Governor Alexei Smirnov told Putin that the plant remains stable. IAEA head Rafael Grossi is expected to visit the plant next week. He earlier called for maximum restraint to avoid a nuclear accident at the Kursk nuclear power plant. Speaking at a meeting of senior officials about the situation in Russia and border regions, Smirnov told Putin that over 133,000 people had left the border regions. Bryansk region governor Alexander Bogomaz said that the border forces had repelled a Ukrainian attempt to cross into Russia. And in the Belgrade region, the governor said that over 30 settlements had been closed and residents relocated. On Thursday evening, Ukraine hit a ferry with fuel tanks in the port of Kavkaz in southern Krasnodar region of Russia. The ferry, loaded with 30 fuel tanks, sank. Dasha Chernashova in Moscow, reporting for DD India.
Updates now from the Israel-Hamas conflict. Hostage and ceasefire talks are expected to pick up again over the coming days in Cairo as mediators look for a way to bridge gaps between Israel and Hamas after more than 10 months of fighting in Gaza. It comes as hostilities between Israel and Hezbollah are escalating amid fear of a wider regional spillover. DD India Sarah Coates has more from Tel Aviv.
Well, the pressure on both Israel and Hamas to come to an agreement, come to a ceasefire deal just continues to mount, although while there is a lot of hope for this happening, there certainly is not a lot of optimism here on the ground. Now, late on Wednesday, US President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris, they had a phone call with Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, really pressing him on the urgency for a truce in Gaza. Now, shortly after this, his office put out a statement. It says that Israel will insist on the achievement of all its objectives of the war as they've been defined by the Security Cabinet, including that Gaza will never again constitute a security threat to Israel. Now, really, the major sticking point this time around is the control over the Philadelphia corridor. This is this very narrow strip of land that separates Egypt and Gaza. And it is a demand of Israel and the Prime Minister that there will be no withdrawal of Israeli forces from this strategic area, with Netanyahu saying that this would be a security threat given that weapon smuggling could happen from Egypt into Gaza. Now, Hamas has also demanded that Israeli forces must withdraw from that area. So certainly a lot of work to do for these key mediators over the weekend as they really try and get across the line and get this truce into play, with this truce really being seen as vital to bring down tensions in other parts of the region, including between Israel and Hezbollah, with cross-border strikes only intensifying. And we also do need to remember that this threat of retaliation from both Hezbollah and also Iran continues to loom over Israel after the assassination of two very senior figures, one of these being Fuad Shakur. He was the second in charge of Hezbollah. He was assassinated in Beirut a number of weeks ago, and just the day after that assassination was another. And this was of Ismail Haniyeh. He was the leader of Hamas's Politburo. So certainly a lot of tension in the region, and once again a lot of pressure on both of these warring parties to finally get this truce done after 10 months of fighting in not only Gaza, but also heavy conflict in Israel's north. Reporting from Tel Aviv, I'm Sarah Coates for DD India.
Still to come on DD India News Hour. Young voters in the United States demand climate change ahead of presidential elections in November. Humanitarian aid resumes in Sudan's war-torn Darfur after 6-month border closure. Hotel fire in South Korea claimed 7 lives, 12 others injured in the incident.
The World Wildlife Organization tells us that over 3 billion people across the globe rely on seafood. There are efforts being made to preserve our marine ecosystem. So let's dive right in.
The course of the river was getting shrinked in the upstream areas, and when there is no freshwater flow, the river Ichamoti only survives in the downstream areas, and it has become, in our terminology, we call it a tidal inlet.
Habitat from so many places in the world, and people didn't even know that it had happened.
Mussels that live at the bottom of the lake have this large effect on the biology of the entire lake.
This is the poster that we provide to people on our fish walks. So they can just look at this and identify which are the fish in season, and when we give them the test to go out and identify sustainable fish.
It's worrying because rising temperatures cause the water to expand, and with it, the sea level to rise.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. The 2024 Democratic National Convention DNC got over with Kamala Harris formally accepting the Democratic Party nomination for the 2024 presidency. The highlight of the fourth and final day was one and only Kamala Harris. She made her case to the country that she is the right person to be the next president of the United States. It was Harris's most important speech, it is said, of her life. Kamala Harris's path from prosecutor to politician has been defined by many firsts. She was America's first Indian-American senator, California's first female and South Asian attorney general. Harris is also the first woman to become vice president, as well as the first black or Asian American person to hold the office.
And so, on behalf of the people, on behalf of every American, regardless of party, race, gender, or the language your grandmother speaks, on behalf of my mother and everyone who has ever set out on their own unlikely journey, on behalf of Americans like the people I grew up with, people who work hard, chase their dreams, and look out for one another. On behalf of everyone whose story could only be written in the greatest nation on earth, I accept your nomination to be President of the United States of America.
Kamala Harris called her opponent Donald Trump as an unserious man. She talked of the chaos and calamity of his time in White House. Harris launched a scathing attack on Trump for appointing a conservative justice to the Supreme Court, which later overturned Roe v. Wade, order which had protected the federal right to abortion for decades.
In many ways, Donald Trump is an unserious man. But the consequences of putting Donald Trump back in the White House are extremely serious. Consider not only the chaos and calamity when he was in office, but also the gravity of what has happened since he lost the last election. Donald Trump tried to throw away your votes. When he failed, he sent an armed mob to the United States Capitol, where they assaulted law enforcement officers. And now, for an entirely different set of crimes, he was found guilty of fraud by a jury of everyday Americans and separately found liable for committing sexual abuse.
On Russia-Ukraine conflict, Kamala Harris said she will continue to stand strong with Ukraine and our NATO allies. While on Israel-Gaza conflict, Harris said she will always defend key American allies, Israel, and call for an end to the conflict. Harris issued a direct appeal to Republicans questioning whether to vote for her, vying to be a president for all Americans. Kamala Harris called voters to be guided by optimism as the election approaches.
Our nation with this election has a precious fleeting opportunity to move past the bitterness, cynicism, and divisive battles of the past, a chance to chart a new way forward. Not as members of any one party or faction, but as Americans. And let me say, I know there are people of various political views watching tonight, and I want you to know, I promise to be a president for all Americans. You can always trust me to put country above party and self, to hold sacred America's fundamental principles, from the rule of law to free and fair elections to the peaceful transfer of power.
Kamala Harris emerged as the Democratic candidate little more than a month ago when allies President Joe Biden, 81 years old, forced him to quit the race. If successful, she stands to make history as the first woman elected as the US president. And for more, DD India's Caroline Malone joins us live from Washington, D.C. Caroline, as Kamala Harris accepts her nomination, take us through the key arguments that she presents that makes her, according to Kamala Harris in her words, the next president of the United States.
So we had a good balance of who she is as a person on Thursday night, and also some hints and some ideas of what her policies would be like if she was president of the United States. In terms of who she is as a person, she spoke about her upbringing. She spoke in particular about her mother, an Indian immigrant who'd come to the United States for an education and stayed. She spoke about how her mother had instilled in her and her sister Maya a strong belief in solutions and being a community member and believing in equal rights for all of their neighbours. She spoke about how an experience when she was younger, when a friend came to her and said she was being sexually abused, and she asked the friend to move in with them so that she could be protected in her own home. She spoke about how that inspired her in part to become a prosecutor. And that led to this theme of her really explaining why she would be a president for all people, why she would act to protect everyone. And she said, you know, her experiences show that she's done that. And that was definitely a theme we heard from other people on the stage, not just people that know her and love her like her sister and family members, but also people that have worked with her, who's spoken about how she has stood up to big tech, how she's stood up to corporations, how she's stood up to criminals. Harris also referred to herself as from law enforcement, which is quite an interesting term that she's used, because that's something that can, you know, really strike a chord potentially with a lot of different people, moderates and potentially conservatives in the United States, who might be considering whether to vote for her. She also spoke about the importance to her and her family of women's rights. We know that's something that she's been working on very strongly as Vice President Harris on behalf of the Biden-Harris administration, particularly with a view to, you know, what's happened with the repealing of abortion rights in the United States. We've seen that in her track record. She said she would enshrine that into law if Congress allowed her to when she becomes president, in her words. She also spoke about border policy, how she said she would pass a bipartisan border policy. That's something that was considered by Congress, but ultimately voted down in the last few months. She said she would move to protect that. She said it's possible to be a country that both respects immigrants, but also is able to fix what is wrong with the border system right now. And that's quite an important balance to strike to really appeal to voters. We know it's something that many Republicans have been complaining about, that they don't think the Biden-Harris administration has done enough to protect and secure the borders. She also spoke about using tax breaks to help the middle class, really uplifting, she said, more than 1 million Americans, protecting social security and also healthcare. So really a plethora of different things she spoke about, as well as gun violence and the need to do more on that. That's something that's really resonated across this convention.
And of course, the sharpest attack by Kamala Harris were reserved for her opponent, Donald Trump. Now, what happens next in the context? A debate between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris is what we're looking forward to?
It certainly is. In just a couple of weeks' time, we're due to have this, much anticipated debate between Harris and Trump. We know, of course, that the last debate was between Trump and Biden, and that led to the situation that we're in now, where Biden was basically deemed by his own party not to be the right candidate, and Harris has then stepped in and now is gaining a lot more traction and momentum amongst followers. You know, Trump spoke to Fox News, a big US media company, just shortly after Harris's speech on Thursday night. He criticised her strongly and said she didn't address properly crime or border issues or many of the things that he has been complaining about, inflation and the things that concern Republican voters. He also spoke about how, you know, he had been willing to debate with Biden on CNN, one of the more Democratic-leaning channels here, how he's also willing to do so on ABC, so confirming there that that debate will take place. He said he's looking forward to it. You know, we've heard from him in the past that he thinks it will potentially be an easy debate, but I think it will be an absolutely interesting one because we have this person, Kamala Harris, who has framed herself and is known as a prosecutor, someone that's taken criminals through the justice system. And then we have, of course, Donald Trump, who has been found guilty of a number of crimes just this year. So, you know, you can only expect that that would be a large part of the debate that Harris chooses to bring up. And it definitely was something that she also spoke about on the stage in Chicago at the convention as well.
Caroline, thank you for joining us with those updates from Washington, D.C. The election war game in America is on. Republican presidential nominee and former U.S. President Donald Trump visited the U.S.-Mexico border in Arizona on Thursday. As expected, he criticized Kamala Harris, calling her lazy border czar. Trump showered praise on the wall that was built during his administration but was never completely finished. An Arizona man is wanted after threatening over social media to kill Trump. The county as he visits the U.S. border with Mexico as part of his campaign. This is the latest in the series of threats against candidates ahead of the November 5th general elections. Despite this and new threats, Trump said he has great respect for Secret Service and the job they do, he says, while adding they made mistakes from which they will learn.
And we have a Marxist that's running, and I don't think you can let her. This country is not ready for a Marxist president. She will never build the wall. She doesn't want to build the wall. She's only saying if she changes her mind, it's only because she wants to get elected, because who wouldn't want to have a strong border? You need strong borders and strong elections, and we have neither. But we're going to have very strong borders, and we're going to have very strong elections soon. We had a border czar who was the border czar. She loved the title, but she didn't want to do the work because she's lazy, and probably more importantly than being lazy, she wants to have an open border.
Meanwhile, young U.S. voters are demanding more action on climate change ahead of presidential elections in November. So far, the Democrats have welcomed the record of nominee Kamala Harris and her vice presidential pick, Tim Walz. DD India's Nick Harper from Washington, D.C. has more on this.
Kamala Harris has a history of prioritising climate change. It was one of her top concerns during her time as California's Attorney General, where she made it her mission to prosecute polluters. As a senator, she helped to sponsor the Green New Deal. Then during her time as vice president, she cast the tie-breaking vote for the Inflation Reduction Act, which is seen as perhaps the largest ever US climate investment. Similarly, her VP pick, Tim Walz, has a history of climate change action. As governor of Minnesota, he's focused on threats to his state, part of that being due to an extreme drought that Minnesota cattle farmers have faced in recent years, along with choking wildfire smoke that's been blown in from Canada. In 2023, Walz signed a new law for Minnesota to only get green energy from sources like wind and solar by the year 2040. Other legislation signed by the governor has prioritised electric vehicles and greater access to EV charging stations. Young Democrats in particular want the Harris-Walz campaign to put climate change at the top of its to-do list if they're elected in November. There is, of course, no guarantee they'll continue to champion climate change action from the Oval Office, but prioritising it in the Democratic platform may help to win over young, progressive, climate-conscious voters in a few months' time. In Washington, Nick Harper, reporting for DD India.
Amid escalating tensions in South China Sea, Chinese Navy has staged combat drills in the South China Sea featuring one of its most advanced amphibious warfare ships. The exercises include both offensive and defensive maneuvers, information gathering, battlefield rescues, helicopter drills, and a simulation in which the ship successfully tracked and destroyed a target in the air. The ship's recent drills in the South China Sea come amid heightened tensions between China and the Philippines. At the same time, Manila has moved to strengthen its military ties with its neighbors and the United States, including its first joint Coast Guard drill with Vietnam off the west coast of Luzon earlier this month. And DD India's William Denslaw joins us from Hong Kong. William, take us through the details of the manner in which these war games are being played.
Well, significantly, these military drills involve the Jinggang Shan, which is a highly sophisticated landing ship unveiled by China. What it includes is the capability to hold hundreds of troops, potentially 4 hovercrafts, as well as 15 amphibious vehicles. It's understood, according to Chinese officials, that these military drills were high-intensity maritime training. They were both defensive and offensive in nature. Significantly, this comes just a few days after a collision was reported around 3:30 a.m. local time on Monday morning, a collision between vessels belonging to China as well as the Philippines. And since then, a high-stakes war of words between Manila and Beijing. Beijing accusing the Philippines Coast Guard of ignoring its warning during that incident. The Philippines firing back with its rhetoric this week, saying that 2 of its vessels were damaged and that China was engaged in unlawful and aggressive maneuvers. We've even had the US State Department weigh in, saying that Beijing's actions were dangerous and reckless, and that has sparked the ire of Beijing, essentially calling on Washington to not interfere in the region. And this is a highly disputed part of the South China Sea, and this is certainly seen as a significant escalation in tension in the region.
And William, given the tit-for-tat war exercises that are taking place in the region, are there any attempts made to de-escalate the tensions as well?
Well, significantly, there has been a high-profile meeting between To Lam, the head of the ruling party in Vietnam, meeting with President Xi Jinping of China in Beijing this week. Now, as far as bilateral relations, well, the two powers, the 2 nations in the region signed a pact essentially calling to normalize and improve relations, especially when it pertains to the South China Sea. So that is seen as somewhat of a diplomatic victory for Beijing when it tries to seek alliances in what is a highly disputed region. Of course, this all comes as we've seen nations like the Philippines lean more towards Washington when it comes to support in these disputed territories. For context, this all needs to be said that this is framed around a ruling that we saw from the Permanent Court of Arbitration, who in 2016 essentially rejected Beijing's assertions that it controls the majority of the South China Sea. That was a historic ruling, but one that has been historically and vehemently rejected by Beijing.
William, thank you for those updates. At least 7 people were killed, 12 others injured in a fire at a hotel in South Korea. The blaze erupted on the 8th floor of the 9-story hotel in Busan, south of the capital Seoul. Late on Thursday evening, 27 guests were staying at the hotel when the fire occurred. The cause of the fire was not yet clear. In June, 23 people were killed in a massive fire at a South Korean lithium battery plant, one of the country's worst factory disasters in years. After a 6-month closure, the first aid trucks prepared by the United Nations World Food Programme crossed Adre border to deliver much-needed aid for war-ravaged West Darfur. The United Nations agency on Wednesday said that more than a dozen trucks delivered food assistance for about 13,000 people threatened with famine in Western Darfur's Kanek region. The agency added that it had food ready to move for 500,000 people. Global monitors say that more than 6 million people face food insecurity across Darfur, which is mostly controlled by rapid support forces. The army-aligned government blocked aid deliveries in February through the Adre crossing into territory controlled by the RSF, alleging that it was being used for weapons delivery. And we're heading for a short break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. America's space agency NASA to announce their final decision on Saturday as to whether two astronauts, Butch Wilmore and Sunita Williams, will return to Earth on Boeing Starliner spacecraft or hitch a ride home with SpaceX instead. The decision could have a huge impact across the rapidly evolving space industry. Starliner launched its first two astronauts into space in June as a crucial test before it can receive NASA approval for routine flights. But what was supposed to be an 8-day mission docked to the ISS has been drawn out by months after the capsule sprang leaks and some of its thrusters failed. If NASA exercises the SpaceX backup plan, Wilmore and Williams would not come home until that mission's conclusion in February 2025, and Starliner would attempt to return to Earth empty. India is celebrating its first National Space Day on August 23rd today, with multiple pan-India events as part of the month-long campaign. On this day in 2023, Chandrayaan-3 accomplished major success with the safe and soft landing of Vikram lander on the lunar surface, making India the fourth country in the world to land on the moon and the first one to land near its southern polar region. The central government officially declared August 23rd as the National Space Day, honouring the success of Chandrayaan-3 mission while recognizing the significant achievements in space exploration. The day highlights several advancements in space technology. And it's time to celebrate many firsts and milestones the country has achieved in various domains. India's tremendous space surge is marked by two remarkable missions, Chandrayaan-3 and Aditya L1. Successful launch of Chandrayaan-3 made India the first nation in the world to successfully land on the south pole of the moon, while mission Aditya L1, India's first space-based Indian mission to study the sun, is also making strides. India is on course to the territory on the sun as well as the moon. DD India Sakal Bhatt gets us more in this report.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
14th July 2023. This date marks India's successful soft landing near the moon's south pole, establishing India as the first one to achieve this remarkable feat. The feat of landing a spacecraft in such proximity to the lunar south pole. Chandrayaan-3 is India's third lunar mission and second attempt at achieving soft landing on the moon's surface. On July 14, 2023 at 2:35 p.m., Chandrayaan took off from Satish Dhawan Space Center in Sriharikota. The spacecraft seamlessly entered lunar orbit on 5th of August 2023. The historic moment unfolded when the lander made a successful touchdown near the lunar south pole on August 23, 2023. Chandrayaan-3 is a three-component mission consisting of propulsion module, lander module and rover module. Successful launch of Chandrayaan-3 resulted in major findings of the mission. Chandra's surface thermophysical experiment measured temperatures reaching 70 degrees centigrade. Chandrayaan-3 is significant for the Indian space program, undoubtedly. It makes India part of the elite group of nations, Russia, the US and China, with demonstrated lunar soft landing capability, showcasing its leadership in space technology, including positioning India as a global hub in the new space economy. The reusable launch vehicle technology aids in cost reduction for future launches as well. Within 2 months of achieving a spectacular feat of landing at closest proximity of Moon, Indian space scientists took another giant leap. It was time to get as close to the Sun. September 2nd, 2023 marked yet another major breakthrough accomplishment for ISRO with the launching of Aditya L1 from Satish Dhawan Space Center at Sriharikota. Aditya L1 is the first Indian mission to study the Sun from space, designed to study the Sun's dynamics. Aditya L1 spacecraft is equipped with 7 payloads that will observe the Sun's photosphere chromosphere. The mission aims to provide valuable insights into the Sun's behavior, which will help scientists better understand space weather and its impact on Earth. Aditya L1 spacecraft was inserted in its targeted halo orbit on January 6, 2024. And after a journey of 127 days, the spacecraft reached the L1 point approximately 15 lakh kilometers from Earth. On July 2nd, Aditya L1 spacecraft completed its first halo orbit around the Sun, a complex maneuver that required precise navigation and control. Aditya L1 instruments will provide valuable data to help scientists understand Sun behavior better. India's groundbreaking mission Chandrayaan-3 uncovering Moon's long-guarded secret and Aditya L1 helping discover Sun's various dimensions, thus setting the tone for India's mega space movement. As India celebrates its 78th Independence Day, its space prowess continues to cruise ahead to rule skies and beyond. Sakal Bhatt's report for DD India.
India's Defence Minister Rajnath Singh, who is on a 4-day visit to Washington DC, had a lively interaction with the Indian community. Interacting with the Indian diaspora, Rajnath Singh expressed joy to see how the Indian community continues to cherish and uphold their cultural values and maintain their connection to their roots. During the minister's visit to Washington, India and the US signed the Security of Supplies Arrangement document and Memorandum of Agreement regarding the assignment of liaison officers. India's Central Bureau of Investigation has submitted a status report in the country's apex court in its probe into the rape murder of a woman doctor at a Kolkata hospital in India's eastern state of West Bengal. Junior doctors protesting over the rape and murder of their colleague at Kolkata's R.J. Kaur Medical College and Hospital on Thursday night said that they would continue agitation since the Supreme Court's observation and a submission by Central Bureau of Investigation sees work of resident doctors in West Bengal is continue. Meanwhile, the required court permission for polygraph test of accused Sandeep Ghosh and 4 other doctors has been received by CBI. It is expected to take place today. Let's now turn to other stories making news today. The Food Safety and Standards Authority of India, FSSAI, has directed all food businesses, including e-commerce food business operators, to remove claims of A1 and A2 types from packaging of milk and milk products. A1 and A2 are different categories of milk based on types of proteins they contain. India's apex court will hear Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal's plea for bail in the liquor policy case on Friday. Earlier, the court denied interim bail to Kejriwal in the alleged Delhi excise policy scam on August 14th. As India gears up to celebrate Lord Krishna's birthday, a grand lamp donation camp was organized in Vrindavan in the North Indian state of Uttar Pradesh. Krishna Janmashtami, a significant Hindu festival that celebrates the birth of Krishna, the 8th avatar of Vishnu. And we're heading for a short break. There's more coming up.
Hidden agendas, twists and turns, strategic games. We think all dots are linked, we just need to connect them. Join me every week as I connect the dots to unravel hidden designs in statecraft, mysteries, and decode issues that matter to you. Watch Connecting the Dots with me at these times on DD India.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. Time for sports. Star Indian javelin thrower Neeraj Chopra secured second spot as he registered a season-best throw of 89.49 metres at the Lausanne Diamond League 2024 on Thursday night. This was in Chopra's first competitive appearance since he bagged silver for India at the Paris Olympics 2024. 26-year-old was edged out by Grenada's Anderson Peters, who claimed the top spot in Switzerland with a mammoth throw of 90.81 metres. Meanwhile, Julian Weber of Germany came in third on the day with the best throw of 87.08 metres. The top 6 javelin throwers in the season standings qualify for the finals in Belgium, slated to be held on the 14th of September. 4 Indian women wrestlers on Thursday became Under-17 world champions in their respective categories, stamping their class in the Under-17 World Wrestling Championships 2024. Aditi Kumari emerged champion in the 43 kg, blanking Maria Luisa Grieca of Greece 7-0 in the title clash. In the 57 kg finals, Neha overpowered Japan's So Tutsui as she stood out with her double leg attacks. In the 65 kg finals, Pulkit faced Daria Frolova, who was competing as a neutral athlete, and won 6-3. Mansi Ladher clinched the top podium spot after beating Hannah Peskaya in the 73 kg finals. Moreover, India also won 2 bronze medals in Greco-Roman style, with Ronak Dahiya and Sainath Pardey ending on podiums. England and Wales Cricket Board announced on Thursday that the Lords in London will host its first ever women's test between India and England in 2026. India women's team will travel to England for a white ball series in 2025. A 5-match T20 series will be followed by the 3 one-day internationals. India will return to England in 2026 for the one-off test. The first match of the T20 series will be played on June 28th, while the 5th match will take place on July 12th. It will be followed by the ODI series. In tennis, US Open organizers have confirmed that Tunisian player Ons Jabeur has pulled out of the tournament after facing an injury-riddled season. 29-year-old withdrew from the City Open earlier this month, citing a right shoulder injury, and in June was forced to retire from the Berlin Open in the quarterfinals. She also missed the Paris Olympics because of knee issues. Following Jabeur's withdrawal, Elise Mertens will take over Tunisian's place in the draw after being installed as the 33rd seed. A qualifier or lucky loser will take the Belgians' place in the draw. The Board of Control for Cricket in India and the England and Wales Cricket Board on Thursday announced the fixtures of India's 2-month-long tour to England in 2025. India will play 5 Test match series from June to August spread across London, Headingley, Birmingham and Manchester, marking the start of a fresh World Test Championship cycle. India are yet to win a Test series in England since 2007. They came close to the 3 years ago in 2021. The series was suspended after 4 Test matches, with India leading 2-1. Due to COVID-19 outbreak in the Indian camp, the last match was then played in 2022, which England won by 7 wickets. Leeds will host the first Test match from June 20th, while Edgbaston will host the second Test 8 days later from 2nd July. The third Test match will be played at the iconic Lords from 10 July. Old Trafford will play host to the 4th Test match from July 23rd, and the last Test match will take place at the Oval in London from 31st of July.